My friends, this is Troy Brewer of Experiencing Real Life, heard every single day on Bible School Radio, 91.3 KDKR, Decatur, Dallas-Fort Worth, and on 91.3 KYJC Commerce.
Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
So what are the chances of a crisis happening? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Hey, if you got a question for me, I want to invite you to go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. There is a link at the top of the page. It says questions and answers. Just click through and send me what your thoughts are, commentary, questions, whatever's on your mind. And I will get you that answer for whatever you send. It's a great way to get information, and it's all at prudentmoney.com. Also, a couple more things. Make sure that you are signed up for the Prudent Money e-letter that keeps you posted as to what we put out on the website throughout the week. And if you ever miss any part of the program or you like listening to podcasts, we do podcasts every program afterwards, after the program's over, and post it. So wherever you consume podcasts, I'm sure we're there because we're on every major platform. So all that information there is to help you get informed on what you need to know. And let's talk a little bit about that, because I talked. We had a conversation last Tuesday about all of the fear that is in the air right now. And it all really comes from these, what I call gloom and doom marketing. And of course, if I went to my inbox, you'd have to wait for me to look, but I bet I could find just today alone 5 or 6 emails talking about bad things that are going to happen. Forecasts, predictions. And everybody's a guru. Everybody's has predicted something that's happened multiple times, they've had multiple predictions that comes true. And you start to wonder, because all of it, here's the good and the bad of a lot of this. You read some of these things, and it certainly does seem like it's plausible. It does seem like it could be true. And so it's very easy to believe. It's very easy to wrap your mind around it. And on the other thing, the other side of the coin, it's totally there to promote fear and to create fear into a buying opportunity for the person who's put the information out there. Because I promise you, if you go through it, if you look through the email, you listen to the video, you'll see that there is a newsletter or something at the end of it that is marketing to you to spend your money on products that they have that's going to correct the problem. And this has been going on for years. But right now, you could sit and I'll bet you get a piece of paper or pencil to it and jot down all the disastrous things that could happen. But remember, no one can predict the future. If someone predicts the future, they get a hold of some information, they look at it. I mean, we were talking yesterday about, Mark Pfeiffer and I were, about the real estate markets and the unusual supply and demand problem that we're having with real estate right now. And he made a comment that, I wish I could write the last chapter of that book, but I wouldn't know what to write. Well, there's many, many, many people who would love to fill in the blanks there with what that last chapter will say. and they'll say, they first of all they predicted the real estate crash in 2008. So you got to have that as part of your background. Maybe they did, maybe they sort of did, just enough to claim that they did. Who knows? And now they're predicting the real estate meltdown of 2023. And comparing it to 2008, which there's absolutely no comparison between the two. If I could come up with several different opinions, and I'm working on that, on what I would call a thesis of what I think will happen with this unusual supply and demand situation that we're facing in real estate. And not even that. Today I wrote to my clients a letter about the emerging commercial real estate problems that are becoming quite evident in China, but are starting to become evident here in the U.S. And we talked about this last week, and yet, once again, no media is covering this, but it's a real problem. But I could go through, and I could back to real estate, residential real estate. I could go through and come out with what I think is my thesis and write that last chapter as if it's going to happen. But the bottom line is, it's luck. It's luck if I'm right. Now, it could be a well-educated guess, and I should get some kudos for that, I would think. But for the most part, it's luck. And, we just can't, nobody's got a crystal ball. Nobody can foresee and here's the other thing, foresee the future. The other thing is, the more sensational and more spectacular the forecast is, probably the less the credibility that you should lend to it. So kind of keep some of this in mind. Just a couple of other things. I have a lot of resources that I follow, that I read throughout the day, throughout the week. And most of these resources are not mainstream media. I go to mainstream media just every once in a while to see what most people are reading to stay relevant. But beyond that, I go to resources that are not on the mainstream, because I want to hear what's really going on. I want to hear from credible sources that I've vetted through the years. And the vast majority of these predictions not even hitting the radar of some of the great minds of finance and economics. Not even remotely. I mean, they're talking about higher level things. They're not talking about some of these things that are being predicted. So keep that in mind. Also remember that everything that's being predicted is possible, but it's also a low probability that it would actually happen. I think for the banks, and let me jump to that for a second, because I'm getting what we're going to talk about when I'm giving a longer introduction than normal to phase into is some of the questions I'm getting. And I like to do that on Thursdays, and we're talking about a lot of the predictions that are being made. And let me say this too, you certainly do not want to read any of these predictions and go make decisions right away. Remember that, and I'm sure that some of these predictions are very well thought out, and people who are giving these predictions actually really do believe. When the bottom line is, it's just like if I said X was going to happen on 3 months from now on a certain date, that is my opinion, and it's not factual until time has come and time has proven me wrong or right. Same thing goes for these people. The one that a client sent me today was about a prediction that was going to happen in the next 30 days. And I was told something about 2 months ago about I was talking to someone who was talking about something that they had read, and that something was going to happen in 30 days. And of course it didn't happen. And once again, not to say that these things can't happen, but just keep it in context. I think that that's what is missing here a little bit. But there is a high probability, because we're just kind of in that plane, that a crisis could happen, that bad things could happen. Who knows? It's kind of like I look at our country kind of like a boiling water that's about to boil over the top of the pan. And it's getting close. The only thing that you can control financially, and this is where these things tend to hit people, is financially, is being the best steward of what God has given you. That means doing the things that you have control over and creating a foundation, a solid foundation that enables you to handle anything that comes your way. And you may go, "Oh, Bob, you have no idea how bad my finances are. You have no idea." In fact, I'm sure a lot of people are saying this. How far behind I am and how much debt I have. And I get that. I totally get that. But at the same time, there is no reason to put off the things that you should be doing to get you on the road to recovery. I think that giving up is just an easy way out. Oh, there's just no way. There's always a way. I tell that to people, and I said on this program many times, who people come in, sit in front of me, and we'll have a conversation. They'll say, I just don't ever think I'll retire. I'll say, well, how do you know you won't retire? I don't know. I mean, I just don't think I will. And you just start to make up your mind that that's never going to happen. When the reality is that there's a retirement plan for everybody. I mean, they don't all look the same, but it can happen. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we head into the break, which I didn't predict. There we go. Head into the break, and we'll talk a little bit about more of this on the other side. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and Kay Smith, PastorChuck.org. At PastorChuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at PastorChuck.org, a full library of great teachings by Kay Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and Kay Smith, PastorChuck.org.
Dr. Charles Stanley.
No one else is the source of peace but Almighty God. He's the source of peace. He created us to love us and to be loved by us. He created to have fellowship with us, to be good to us, to provide for us, to preserve us.
The teaching of Dr. Charles Stanley on In Touch, helping you grow in Christ every day.
In Touch, weekdays at 12:30, here on KDKR.
In 1 Corinthians, Paul reminds us to run the race of life to win the prize. Join me, Dr. Erwin Lutzer, for Running to Win. Be strengthened to finish your race with confidence.
Weekday mornings at 8 o'clock here on KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com. Send it in to the Q&A at the top of the page, and I'll get you taken care of. That's off the website, prudentmoney.com. Talking about the unusual amount of fear that's in the air based on predictions and forecasts and everything. And to keep it into context, the only thing that you can control is the actions you take. And I call this the Big Four that lays the foundation, financial foundation for everybody to begin to build on for the things that are good stewardship. And the first one is audit your investment accounts. Make sure that you bring all your investment accounts together, operating under one strategy. Get that strategy. And when I say strategy, that means that you can function in a good or bad market, which is really missing today in most investment strategies. And be aware of your risk level, how much risk you're taking. I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and I said, the problem is that this is the conversation about risk. On a scale of 1 to 10, Mr. Prospective Client, tell me what your risk level is. Well, I think I'm a 6. Great. You seemed like a 6, but I wasn't sure. Now you confirmed I'm a 6. Now that's as far as they go with the risk discussion. When a 6 means one thing to the advisor and a 6 means the other thing to the prospective client. And so they're operating on different pages, which is at the beginning of potentially a disastrous relationship. Get your debt in order to pay it off. And I think there's so many times when you think about that, it's easy to come to that conclusion. Once again, there's no way I'll get this debt paid off. If you figure out how much, what you're paying, your debt numbers, and interest rate, payment, and balance, you'll see that it's not impossible to do that, but you've got to start, because I'm not saying that a crisis or disaster is happening tomorrow or 2 weeks from now or 4 years from now. Who knows when things will happen? Just to be ready for it. And if you're practicing the habits of good stewardship, like getting out of debt, then that's all you can do. Emergency accounts built up. There's statistic after statistic that shows that people do not have enough emergency account money. And I would, we've talked about this many times before, but I would even encourage you with your 401k plans. If you're putting a lot of money back in your 401k plan without an emergency account, you're funding the long term and doing nothing about the short term. And if you have a short-term problem, you have long-term solutions, but you need short-term solutions. So it usually goes on a credit card. So figure out how you can start to build that emergency account. And then finally, make sure your family is taken care of in the event that something happens to you. Oh yeah, I need life insurance. Yeah, I'll get to that. Well, if something happens to you before you happen to get to it, your family's going to have a real problem. And stuff like term insurance is so inexpensive. So those are my big 4, and that really gets you started in developing a foundation, get some good stewardship habits happening. Obviously, the most important thing that you can do is through a lot of prayer, during your prayer time, during your time that you study and read Scripture, that you pray about this. You pray about stewardship. Stewardship's a big deal. And it's how we handle what God has given us that is what's important. And God teaches us. If you take a step back and you really look at money and some of the things that happen, you'll start to realize that, first of all, money's got its hands in everything. Everything. And number 2, there's a lot that God can teach us through money. So just a few things to consider and think about. So I've talked about this many times, and every day I'm getting an email from a client, from friends, you name it. They're saying, hey, I received a letter that said I've been part of a security breach, that my information has been stolen. And I have I told you about the friends that I have. They're retired, and they received 3 in the last, I think, week and a half. 3 different companies. They received their 4th one yesterday. That their information has been compromised. And then I talked to somebody today that said, hey, we got a letter, what do we do? It's very simple. 2-step process. The first thing that you do is you have 3 credit reporting agencies that hold a credit file for you. Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And what you're wanting to do is, the first thing is you want to pull up all 3 of your credit reports and make sure that the three credit reports are all correct, that you have nothing on there that needs to be changed, that you don't have any strange accounts on there, anything like that. Everything is what, in fact, it may be negative information, but you know it's true and it's right, and so you don't, so you can't change it, but it will fix itself over time. Then you lock it up with a security freeze, and a security freeze, when you lock up that credit, when you freeze your credit report, nobody can get into it without the code that only you know about. So you got a code, and put that code in a safe place, not on your phone preferably, but in a safe place, and you can open up your credit back up. And that is the safest thing that you can do for your credit reports. But only after you've confirmed that everything is right and correct and there's no fraud going on that you weren't aware of. So there's several websites that will sell you a 3-in-1 credit report. You just have to know what the deal, what kind of package or whatever they're promoting. If you Google it, you can probably find the 3 credit reports that you can see. You can go to there's a government program that gives you access to your credit reports, but after you go through the process of trying to get in and see them, even though it's free, you may have wished that you'd have gone the other route and spent the money. I've heard it's a frustrating process. That's just what I hear. And freeze those credit reports up, and you should be fine. A couple questions I get: will that hurt my credit score? Absolutely not. Second question: well, what if I need to get to my credit? You just call and you tell, and you can do this at Equifax.com, Experian.com, and TransUnion.com. And you can call in, or you can do it, I believe you can do it online through the website. But that's what I would do. And that's really one of your best ways to protect yourself. You can also have turn on credit monitoring as a safety valve. If for some reason somebody got into your credit report, your credit file, and used your information, at least the credit monitoring would pick that up. So it just depends on how detailed you want to get. But I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like this. And I've been talking about identity theft for literally 2 decades on this program. And there's a lot of reasons. I Googled it, and you can look it up, and there's talking about a lot of reasons for the spike. But the bottom line is, this is something we've got to take seriously. And because you do not want to have this as a problem, because once it becomes a problem, there was a couple that I know that had actually, I think he was flipping through the links in his credit monitoring, and he saw something there that he hadn't seen before. Didn't say, "Oh, that was nothing." Didn't investigate it. Didn't do anything about it. It turned out to be someone ordered, I think it was DirecTV in his name or something like that. Watched it free for 30, 45 days, and they canceled it, and they started billing him with debt collection notices. But he never did anything about it. he could have potentially caught that right when it was happening and not had to go through what he had to go through. I think he said he spent 35, 40 hours on getting that cleaned up. And I could tell you story after story of people who've literally, this has dominated their lives and took an enormous amount of time. So just keep that in mind as you think about your personal identity, how important it is, how important your information is, and how you want to keep it away from the bad guys. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.